I have a bad habit of trying to do everything perfectly. And if it's not perfect, it doesn't get done. Well, in the end, not getting something done is way worse than having something done and impartially done. So I'm going to try this differently. This is another version of how I'm going to try to teach Esther. Because obedience without perfection is better than disobedience with what wouldn't be perfect anyway. Let's be real. No one's perfect. There are not going to be any points where things aren't flawed. All right. So far we've met King Ahasuerus, also known as King Xerxes, not to be confused with Artaxerxes, who was his son. He is kind of a hothead, which we know. We're just going to recap. One of the things that I have learned when I was teaching children's ministry is I would have my kids recap at the beginning of each study. And what would happen would be really, really cool. They would recap. And in the process of the recap, they would remember the story. And I didn't just have them recap what they learned the week before. I had them go back from the beginning. One of my girls had been with me through the entire study. And she literally would go, we were going through the book of Joshua, and she would go, well, this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened. And she could retell the entire whole beginning of the story. And it was amazing. And I loved it. So I recap because I want you to remember, when there's time in between the studies, the really cool things about what happened before, because the cool things that applied before and even the bad things, they apply to the future, and we need to remember what they are so that we can learn from them. So, King Ahasuerus had a gigantic party. He was trying to get money to create a banquet, a banquet, so that he could put on an expedition to go fight Greece and take over that area. He drank quite a bit and was showing off his splendor to all sorts of people. And in the end of it, he ended up asking his queen to come and present herself in front of all of his guests. Well, whatever his reasoning was, we're not entirely sure. There's a lot of speculation. If you want to know more about that, watch the other videos. But she refused, and it ended up getting her kicked out of the kingdom, which sucks for Vashti. But in the end, it was something that really needed to happen. The Lord really needed to do some work on the kingdom. He needed to move a new queen into place. So, the king consulted his wise men, asked him what they should do. They said, make an irreversible law that'll kick that will kick Vashti out of the kingdom. See, this is what not perfect looks like. I normally have everything typed up on a screen and I read to you. Not today. We're going to see how this goes. But so the king asked, what do we do? And they said, make an irreversible law that gets rid of Queen Vashti so that no one else will ever think that standing up to their husband is a good idea. So he did, and he got her banished. And then they went on from there, and they said, and her royal position is to be given to another woman who is more worthy than she. They approved the proposal, and they sent it out to all of the different provinces. And that's where we last left off. So then we jump into chapter 2, verse 1. Sometime later, when King Ahasuerus' rage had cooled down, he remembered Vashti, what she had done, and what was decided against her. The king's personal attendant suggested, let a search be made for beautiful young virgins for the king. Let the king appoint commissioners in each province of his kingdom, so that they may gather all the beautiful young virgins to the harem at the fortress of Susa. Put them under the supervision of Haggai, the king's eunuch, keeper of the women, and give them the required beauty treatments. Then the young woman who pleases the king will become queen instead of Vashti. This suggestion pleased the king, and he did accordingly. All right, what do we have here? So, some time later, when King Ahasuerus' rage had cooled down, he remembered Vashti. sometime later. That does not give us very much to work off of. Now, if you look at the history books, we find out that sometime later was actually about 4 years. 4 years. That's a big gap if we don't know about that. It's not just he got rid of Vashti and then a little while later he decided that the timing was off. Sometimes the Lord makes us wait. There's gaps in the story. And when we get to the end of the story, we get to turn around and tell people things. And the gap might be, oh yeah, it was 7 years. But they don't have to feel the 7 years in the story. Just like we don't feel the 7 years, just like here we don't feel the 4-year gap with Esther in the book of Esther. So, what did Ahasuerus do in that time? Well, he had finished his party. He had gained the people that he wanted to join him, and he actually went out to war against Greece and in Athens and all of these different areas. Well, he came back with his tail between his legs. He came back extremely defeated. A side story that I read, it is not in the Bible. It is in historical stories, but it is not in the Bible. So take this with the grain of salt that it is, but I just want to share this to paint a little bit of the picture of who Ahasuerus was based on history books. There's enough out there that I could see this being very, very accurate. There was a man that had sons in Ahasuerus' army. And the man had asked Ahasuerus to do something for him. And, the man had volunteered to do something for Ahasuerus. And instead, Ahasuerus really blessed the man. And so the man was super bold. And he went, okay, he was a little afraid that they were going to lose the battle. And so he went to Ahasuerus and asked, can I leave one of my sons home? That way if the rest were, he didn't say this, but if the rest were killed, then he would still have one son at home to take care of him in his old age. Well, Ahasuerus was so angry that he took that son and he killed him. He cut him in half, and then he put him on each side of the road, and he marched his troops through them as a display to show, we will never be conquered. Again, not biblical story. I forget where the reference was. I think it was a ancient history encyclopedia that I read that in. I'll have to go back and check. Because again, I'm not going off my notes where everything's perfectly typed out and laid out. If you guys really, here's the thing. If you're watching this and you really want to know, let me know, and I will, I'll look back at my notes and I'll get you that. Okay. So King Ahasuerus, not a nice guy to be around. Again, we know he's a kind of a hothead, but that was just more proof that he was a hothead. So he goes to war. He loses. And he comes back extremely humbled. Because at this point, he's now, how many people in the kingdom has he told that he is going to go take over Greece? He's literally thrown a 6-month-long party telling everyone about what he's about to do. And then he comes back extremely defeated. That's not a guy with this much pride to come back this defeated. This isn't good. This is not good at all. So, when his rage had cooled down, had his rage cooled down from being mad at Vashti? Had his rage cooled down from losing the battle? We don't know. It doesn't stipulate. But his rage had cooled down. He remembered Vashti, what she had done and what was decided against her. So here he is. He is returned home. Sorry for the moving of the camera. I'm filming this on my phone. He is returned home, defeated. And he goes, it would be really nice to spend some time with my wife right now. He had a bunch of women in the harem, but Queen Vashti would have had to have been something really special to have been chosen in the first place. So here he is. He's remembering his wife. Going, oh yeah, she's not my wife anymore, is she? We publicly, irreversibly banished this woman. And even if he wanted to, he couldn't get her back because Persian law was Persian law. You couldn't change things. He might have been regretting his decision just a little bit. But this is also important, because if we learn from our bad decisions, when we make a flawed character decision, we can either make that decision over and over and over and over again, or we can choose that the next time we come into this situation, we are not going to do things the same way. We're not. That is our choice. And that's what I would encourage you to do. Do not let your past decisions keep you stuck. So what if you screwed up? So what? Things happen. Keep going. The only way you fail is if you stop ever trying again in the future. Don't let that be the case. He learned. We'll find out more about that later. I'm not going to give you spoilers. All right. Now, he's remembered all this stuff has happened. And it says in verse 2, the king's personal attendants suggested, let a search be made for beautiful young virgins for the king. They obviously could see that he was distressed. Now, we don't know if he told them, oh, I miss my queen, him being the guy he is. Who knows? But these guys were with him day and night, so they knew him really well. So there's a good chance they just looked at him and they were like, ooh, he's not happy, right? Let a search be made for beautiful young virgins for the king. Let the king appoint commissioners in each province of his kingdom so that they may gather all the beautiful young virgins to the harem at the fortress of Susa. All right, let's pause here. In each of the provinces of his kingdom. So now he's back at it, just like he had to send all of these notes out to get people to come to his giant party. And then he had to send this decree out to banish Vashti. All of this stuff that he's doing, again, is costing his kingdom time and resources, which he doesn't care about at all because he's just stupidly rich. Stupidly rich. I mean, just insane. So he's sending out these people to each province in the kingdom to bring back all of the beautiful virgins so that he can have them around to find out which one that he likes the best. We'll find out a little bit more about why this bothers me so incredibly. But one, if you bring in all the beautiful young virgins of the land into the king, exactly what kind of women are you leaving left for the rest of the men that are there? Yeah, think about that one for a second. I mean, I'm sure all of the less attractive females in the land, but at this point who aren't virgins, are the left to be the pick of the men that are there. Anyway, that can't be good for anybody in society. And that's so true. Like, I was just thinking about that. How often is that? Our selfishness hurts everyone that's around us. It never just affects us. I mean, it always affects us, but it always affects everyone that's around us. It's just not good. Okay, so he's going to get all of the young virgins and he's going to bring them back to the harem at the fortress of Susa and put them under the supervision of Haggai. Okay, a harem was a place that they put, if any of y'all are, here's the deal. If any of y'all are watching this and you've got kids around, I want to ask you to pause this for a second. Or make the decision if you want your little kids in the room for this, because we're going to start getting into stuff that's a little bit deeper. I mean, I probably should have said this before I started talking about Ahasuerus and his war path. So I'm sorry for that. But we're going to talk about some more adult-themed content based on the Bible right here. So if you've got any kids in the room, this would be the time to make the decision on if you want them to hear this or not, if they're age appropriate for this or not. All right. So the harem was the place where the king would put his concubines. Basically the women that he thought were beautiful, that he could call into his chamber to have relations with whenever he wanted. They weren't necessarily his wives, but what I read was that if the king took someone as a concubine at that point, they would also be considered to be a wife. They would be married to him in a way, but they would have like a way lesser degree than actually like his queen would. So technically, like by proxy, he could have like thousands of wives in that, but they're called concubines and they're kept in the harem. It's a very ridiculous, vast searching for pleasure, because what would happen is if a woman was taken into a concubine of the king, he would sleep with her, and she would not be permitted to return to her family or friends. She would never see them again after that. You've got the palace and you've got the harem, and then you've got them in the harem, never to see their family or friends again. And the only time that they're going to have an intimate relationship with their kind of husband is if he desires them and wants them back. That just makes my heart hurt. That makes me sad. That is not the way intimacy is supposed to be with a man and a woman. It's supposed to be between one man and one woman. And it's supposed to be a committed relationship in a covenant before the Lord forever. What the Lord has joined together, let no man separate. That's what it's supposed to be. This is not it. All right, so he's going to bring them all back to the harem at the fortress of Susa and put them under the supervision of Haggai, the king's eunuch. Now, eunuch can stand for a bunch of different words. One of them is a castrated male. It can also be someone who has imposed themselves with celibacy. I tend to lean more towards castrated male. It does not say for sure which one this is in this. Because someone who's decided on imposed celibacy to live a life around thousands of women taking care of them all the time, that just sounds difficult. Just saying. But if he was a castrated male, then you could let him be in charge of thousands of women and you really wouldn't have to worry about him because, well, you wouldn't have to worry about him. Okay, put them under the supervision of Haggai, the king's eunuch. Apparently the king does not trust a regular male around all of his women, who only get to spend time with him intimately maybe once in their life. So ridiculous. And give them the required beauty treatments. So they're going to be locked away forever, and they're going to have all of these beauty treatments performed to them. Now, some people might be like, yeah, that's the life. Look, if you were poor and you had no chance of another husband, or maybe your dad had a lot of daughters, I mean, there's a chance that this might be a really appealing option. You're going to have food and clothing and shelter, and good food and clothing and shelter. You'd have protection. So this actually wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for some. It was a different culture back then. Women couldn't just go out and get a job and provide for themselves. We're very, very, very blessed to be able to have that ability now. And they get all these required beauty treatments. So if they were somebody that liked to just sit around and eat grapes and put on mascara and look beautiful all the time inside of a palace and lack everything except for the social companionship of other women, I mean, it could be a good gig. It's not a gig I want, but it could be a good gig. Okay. Then the young woman, so this is still the king's personal attendant suggested this, so he's telling all the things that he thinks should happen. Then the young woman who pleases the king will become queen instead of Vashti. This suggestion pleased the king, and he did accordingly. Doesn't surprise me that this pleased him. Yes, absolutely. All of the beautiful young virgins in the kingdom, yes, bring them to my palace. This will be a very entertaining season. Verse 5. In the fortress of Susa, there was a Jewish man named Mordecai, son of Jair, son of Shimei, son of Kish, a Benjaminite. He had been taken into exile from Jerusalem with the other captives when King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon took King Jeconiah of Judah into exile. Mordecai was the legal guardian of his cousin, Hadassah, that is, Esther, because she had no father or mother. The young woman had a beautiful figure and was extremely good-looking. When her father and mother died, Mordecai had adopted her as his own daughter. So, God makes sure Mordecai's in the right area for this. It talks about his lineage, on and on and on. And he was the legal guardian of his cousin Hadassah. Okay, so she had no father or mother. They had passed away. I think it's another reason that Esther and I relate, or that I relate so much to Esther, is because my mom and dad have also passed away. And other characters like this, I just relate to. Also like the Disney characters, when it shows mom or dad or somebody that have both passed away. I'm like, I get that. I get that. She had a beautiful figure and was extremely good looking. God making people beautiful is not always a vanity thing. He can use it for his advantage, and in this case he did. He needed Esther to be beautiful. Otherwise the king would have never taken a look at her. Because he was selfish and he only wanted to see the beauty. That's all he wanted. So God can even use that. And then when her father and mother had died, Mordecai had adopted her as his own daughter, which tells you a lot about Mordecai. He's a good guy. Just adopted her and took her in. It's pretty awesome. Verse 8. When the king's command and the edict became public knowledge, and when many young women were gathered at the fortress of Susa under Haggai's supervision, Esther was taken to the palace into the supervision of Haggai, keeper of the women. Okay, when the king's command and edict became public knowledge, and when many women were gathered at the fortress of Susa, Esther was taken. So there was already a bunch of people that had been collected. Esther was not the first one there banging on the door going like, let me in, I want to be part of this. Esther was taken into the palace, into the supervision of Haggai, the keeper of the women. So she was later to the party, it sounds like. We don't know if she protested, if Mordecai was the one that decided to take her. We don't know exactly how that went down. Maybe God just gave Mordecai peace. We don't know. But Esther went. And it's a good thing she did. Verse 9. The young woman pleased him and gained favor so that he accelerated the process of the beauty treatments and the special diet that she received. So, cosmetics and special food and diet to make you super appealing to the king. This is all about being sensual at this point. So Haggai really is just incredibly impressed with Esther, which is very cool. To be given favor by the Lord and to have people look on you with favor. It's a really cool place to be. I would encourage you, seek the Lord just for who he is. But in the process of finding his favor, there's so much joy in living in that. Seek him above all else. When you find him, it'll change so much about who you are. Do it. Okay. So, he accelerated the process of the beauty treatments and the special diet that she received. He assigned 7 hand-picked female servants to her from the palace and transferred her and her servants to the harem's best quarters. Already, she's being advanced more and more. 7. Number of completion. Esther, verse 10, did not reveal her ethnicity or her family background because Mordecai had ordered her not to make them known, and she was being obedient. The Bible says, honor your father and mother. Now, her father and mother had passed away, but she was under the authority of Mordecai because he had stepped in as her guardian. I have 2 wonderful people. Their names are Rick and Tammy, and they adopted me as mom and dad. And I love spending time with them, and they have given me correction. And most of the time I've listened to it because I love them. And the Lord says to honor and respect them. And I know that there's a blessing there. And that's what Esther's doing here. It's not her birth parents, but she's still being respectful under the authority that she's been placed under. There's wisdom and protection in being underneath that covering. Every day, Mordecai took a walk in front of the harem's courtyard to learn how Esther was doing and to see what was happening to her. Because again, they can't have contact with each other. This is the best that he can do because he loves her. During the year before each young woman's turn to go to King Ahasuerus, the harem regulation required her to receive beauty treatments with oil of myrrh for 6 months. And then with perfumes and cosmetics for another 6 months. Dude, that's insane. That's so much time. A year of prep. A year of prep. They're not even going to meet the king for a solid year while all of these beauty treatments and stuff like that happen. I mean, that's just crazy. Just crazy. When the young woman would go to the king, she was given whatever she requested to take with her from the harem to the palace. So, she could go, I really know that King Ahasuerus likes the color blue. This is my speculation. I don't know if King Ahasuerus actually likes the color blue. We don't know. He's kind of a hothead. He probably preferred red. Who knows? But she goes, I know King Ahasuerus really likes the color blue. So I would like to be able to wear a blue dress, and I want to be able to take a blue tiara, and I want to be able to take a blue scepter. And that is how I want to be presented to the king. And whatever she wanted, they would give her, and she would be able to go in. I don't know. Maybe they would be like, oh, I'm a fire eater. I'm going to show him my talent. Let me take a torch with me. I don't know. Silly things. But whatever it was that they asked for, they could take. Now pay attention to this, because it's easy to miss. Verse 14. Whatever female it was that was about to go into King Ahasuerus, she would go in the evening, and in the morning, she would return to the palace. In the morning, she would return to a second harem under the supervision of the king's eunuch Shagaz, keeper of the concubines. She never went to the king again unless he desired her and summoned her by name. This is not just a beauty pageant. They're being dolled up. They are sent in the evening. I don't know if you all know this. I hope some of you are just completely, blatantly unaware and this never happened to you. But if the guy calls you at night and he wants you to come over and stay till the morning, he's only got one thing in mind. Just one. He don't love you. He doesn't want to spend time with you. He is not going to make you his girl. Especially if all he's done for the past 6 months is make sure that you eat stuff that keeps you thin and pretty and puts makeup on you. All right? Okay. Not saying that if a guy takes care of you and pays for you to be able to eat well and buys you cosmetics that he's a bad guy. That is not my point. Don't come at me with that. That's not what I'm saying here. But if that's what he's doing and he wants you to come over in the evening and you're going to leave the next morning and you're going to get taken to a second harem, so that way they've got him split. He knows which ones he's already test driven and gotten to go with there. Moved over to a different harem. Okay. She never went to the king again. Unless he desired her and summoned her by name. I don't even want to know how many baby showers they had to throw 9 months after this. 1 day after at a time. I wonder if they just did like big old... Never mind. Anyway. Baby showers. There would be so many of them after this insanity. Okay. Unless he desired her, which he might, and summoned her by name. A different woman every night. With all of the beautiful young virgins gathered from all his provinces. Okay, can we remember how many provinces he has? Let's go back. Let's go back to, where is it? Verse 1, chapter 1, verse 1. These events took place during the days of Ahasuerus, who ruled 127 provinces. Okay, 127. Let's say there was only one beautiful young virgin in each province. Unlikely, extremely unlikely. That would have been 127 women, which would have meant that he was entertained for, 5 months? Different women every night for 5 months. I'm sorry, but somewhere around day 30, names? I don't know. I have no idea what she was called. The tall one with dark hair and brown eyes. King Ahasuerus, that's like most of all of the girls that are in here. I don't know what you're talking about. And apparently she wasn't that special. Names? Like, this guy is so selfish. Why would he remember a woman's name? So the likelihood of getting called back, especially months down the road or years down the road, he doesn't even remember that you exist. You're never going to see this man again. And there goes your one intimate relationship with a man ever. She never went to the king again unless he desired her and summoned her by name. Dang, dude. This just makes me mad for them. Verse 15. Esther was the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had adopted her as his own daughter. When her turn came to go to the king, she did not ask for anything except what Haggai, the king's eunuch, keeper of the women, suggested. Esther gained favor in the eyes of everyone who saw her. It really reminds me of the fact that it says we're not supposed to walk according to our own understanding or what we think or know. Because we may have this idea like, ooh, the king really likes this, so this is what I'm going to do. She was smart. She was very smart. She exercised a lot of wisdom and grace because she asked Haggai, what should I take with me on my night with the king? Now, at this point, Haggai has seen, we don't know how many women went before Esther. We don't. But we do know she came later to the party. So there were women who had already been introduced to the king. Ruined forever for other men. Stupid. And she asked Haggai, what do I take with me? At this point, he would have known because the king would have been talking. Ooh, I liked that one. She came in and blah, blah, blah. Or she looked like this. Or she did this. Or he would just know. Haggai would have been around the king to know. Or he would hear enough palace gossip to know what it was that pleased the king. And it would be in Haggai's best interest to pass that information along because then the king would be happier more often too. And Esther already has special favor with Haggai. So he, at this point, if he's found out things, he's going to tell her because he wants her to win. That's what this favor leads up to. And what did she do? She only took what he said, not anything that she thought would work. She only listened to the wisdom of Haggai in this case. Esther gained favor in the eyes of everyone who saw her. She was living her life well. She was taken to King Ahasuerus in the palace in the 10th month. In the 10th month, the month Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. Okay, so we know, going back, this is where I wish I had all of my notes and timelines. In the 3rd year was when he had his party, when his party started, right? That he held for 6 months, and then he was out for 4 years-ish on his exhibition, and then he goes through and he does all of these things. So in the 7th year of his reign, I did not flip enough pages back over. In the 10th month, so later on during the year, it's given him some time to do all of these things. It says, the king loved Esther more than all of the other women. She won more favor and approval from him than did any of the other virgins. He placed the royal crown on her head and made her queen in place of Vashti. The king had a great banquet for all of his officials and staff. It was Esther's banquet. He freed the provinces from tax payments and gave gifts worthy of the king's bounty. Now, for some people, they might just be like, oh man, she's the luckiest girl in the world. Luck has nothing to do with this. This has everything to do with Jesus. When the virgins were gathered, verse 19, a second time, Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate. Esther had not revealed her family background or her ethnicity, still because Mordecai had told her not to, as Mordecai had directed. She obeyed Mordecai's orders as she always had while he raised her, as she always had. She's not just being diligent because the situation scares the heck out of her. She's always been diligent about this. It's a practiced part of her proven character. During those days, while Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate, Bigthan and Teresh, two of the king's eunuchs who guarded the entrance, became infuriated and planned to assassinate King Ahasuerus. Who knows why? Maybe they were mad. This is speculation. This is not biblical. This is speculation. Comes from my brain, not from God's word. Okay? Okay. Maybe the king took some of their sisters as the virgins of the land. And they were really upset about the way they were treated. I don't know. Maybe they were mad that the king had turned them into eunuchs. That could be upsetting. Maybe he just couldn't remember their names because he couldn't remember anybody's name. I mean, again, all speculation. We don't know why they were mad, but they were extremely mad. They were infuriated, and they planned to assassinate King Ahasuerus. So they were going to kill him. When Mordecai learned of the plot, he reported it to Queen Esther, and she told the king on Mordecai's behalf. I love how this train works of Esther is the closest to the king, but Mordecai is the one that finds out about this. Esther wouldn't have been in a position to find out, and Mordecai wasn't in a position to talk to the king. God's never going to leave you in a point where you don't have a bridge of communication with the people that you need at the right timing. When the report was investigated and verified, both men were hanged on the gallows. This event was recorded in the historical record in the king's presence. So the king would write down everything that happened and keep it in a book somewhere. It was important to him to know what was going on. It says here they were hanged on a gallows. Now, there's also a point that says that the gallows at that point could have been a really large stick. Well, not a stick, a pole. It would have been a gigantic pole with a very sharp point on the end of it. And what they would do is they would impale people on it. That's disturbing. That's extremely, extremely disturbing. I mean, being hung by your neck, that's disturbing too. I don't think I prefer either one of them, but, anyway. So, gallows could have been hung by the neck, or it could have been impaled on a pike. And these guys got, instead of King Ahasuerus getting dead, they got dead. Not good for them. Okay. Actually, I don't think that would be good for anybody's health. But anyway, things are put in place. Wheels are turning. They're starting to go towards the climax of the story. And so this is where I will leave you. I hope this blesses you guys, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.